Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Dead Malls, your one home for the coziest mall content and everything retail related. In tonight's episode, I wanted to track down and see one mall in Iowa's Southeast Nook, one in which I've been to many times, and every time has been closed with the lights off, looking completely abandoned. And for the longest time, that's actually why this mall slipped off my radar, is because I believed it had closed forever. But Keokuk, Iowa's River City Mall / Keosippi Mall, by some miracle, opened on my revisit down at the end of April 2024. And I was transported into a world unlike any other, a mall which has sat untouched for 55 years, with 0 stores open inside of it, and still runs power through those tungsten bulbs. But before I spoil too much, I'd like to take a moment and shout out our winner, who was able to successfully guess the next mall. Very nice job, Jamie Gav. If you'd like to have your chance of being shouted out in the next episode, stick around for the next challenge. Anyways, let's head down to Keosippi Mall, hope its doors open, tell the story of, and see how it was doing as of my visit just a few weeks ago in April of 2024. Before we tell the story of Keosippi Mall, you too can be hypnotized by its dreamy, liminal-like sights. Those glowing tungsten bulbs and a few pot skylights were just about this mall's only sources of light. And being the only one amongst the dark hallways, it was spooky and equally creepy. I felt almost as if I had stepped into my very own liminal dreams. So I'll let this song play through, and you too can get a feel of the mall. And then we'll begin our story. Keosippi's story begins just over 60 years ago in the early morning hours of Friday, April 17th, 1964. on the future side of the mall, which before then was a collection of several blocks of old brick buildings and some old homes. All was quiet and nothing seemed to be amiss, just a little windy along Keokuk's quiet shores. At approximately 3:40 a.m., Scott Brumback, an attendant working the toll booth on the nearby municipal bridge, rings the fire alarm, stopping truck driver Paul Daugherty, where both of them watch and observe a scene straight out of a horror movie. The entire town looked ablaze and in an inferno of orange flames, as a small warehouse fire, which had spread rapidly, had caught the breezy morning winds and spread through over 6 blocks of downtown. The fire department was quick to respond, containing the fire and letting it burn through the morning hours, gutting several homes, factories, businesses, and historical landmarks. Few were injured, and thankfully nothing further, but several had lost everything in the fire. The 4 blocks where most of the damage occurred were thankfully largely empty at the time, as the Keosippi Urban Renewal Project was in the works, slated to completely raze the entire area that summer. Funny how coincidental that is, as the fire only touched the blocks the city was planning to tear down, even crossing historical Main Street and ravaging several older row buildings where a future hotel was slated to be built. The site was soon razed and prepped for future development. Between 1965 and 1966, talks between Keokuk's urban renewal officials and Iowa-based mall developers General Management, or as you might better know them, General Growth Properties, would begin to build a brand new 200,000 square foot shopping center on the site, one to hopefully bring the retail life back to an already ailing Keokuk, Iowa. Keosippi Shopping Plaza, as it would come to be known, would quickly sign on Montgomery Ward and JCPenney as its primary anchors, with Woolworths and Osco Drug joining as the mall's 2 junior anchors. Along with over 20 stores, Keosippi quickly became the big talk of town, as the new mall would feature just about everything it was currently missing. All of that in a comfortable, climatized environment. Construction crews were quick to start, and in 1967, the steel frame of the mall took shape, with the first of the mall's new anchors to open soon after. It was weird, because while I was walking through this mall, and what you may have noticed by this point while watching, is how my camera sometimes struggles to pick up all of the different lighting, between the golden tungsten bulbs and them sometimes flickering in and out of different light anomalies, the different skylights filling the mall with small amounts of blue light, and then the pale green remnants of an old Osco drug coming up. All of it washed into a murky sea of the mall's blackened storefronts. It can be a bit dizzying, but at the same time, relaxing and bliss. And it could have been here all day, washed out under the mall's reverbed radio of soft oldies. Montgomery Ward would open their doors first on April 5th, 1967, while the rest of the mall was still being built, the latter of which to open in the summer of 1969. Finally, after years of planning and waiting, Keosippi Shopping Plaza would officially open its doors on August 20th, 1969. What shoppers of small-town Iowa were greeted with was a bustling hub of activity. Situated between anchors Montgomery Ward and JCPenney, which was still under construction, lay the very simple yet alluring mall atmosphere, similar in every way to almost every other GGP mall at the time. Keosippi featured the exact same look you see today. Burnt tile floors, planters, benches, drop ceilings, the standard GGP model. Stores to open with, or shortly after, included Noble Shoes, Earl Norman, Regis, Hallmark, Stevenson's, Gallencamp Shoes, Woolworths, and Osco Drug, among many others. The mall, to say the least, was a huge success, raking in crowds of hundreds most days throughout the rest of the 1970s, and definitely bringing the life back to downtown Keokuk. JCPenney would join the lineup on September 16th, 1970, completing the layout of Keosippi Plaza. Interestingly, JCPenney and its competitor Montgomery Ward across the mall both featured full-line auto centers, with Penny's visible out in the front parking lot and Ward's attached to the building itself. Early that next year, on the 6th of January 1971, a brand new 3-screen Plaza Cinemas mall theater would open, showing films through the years such as Love Story, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and Planet of the Apes. Keosippi Plaza would thrive throughout the rest of the 1970s, without much change, and the mall would end up bringing the life back to downtown, marking the end of Keo's urban renewal project. Keokuk as a whole would benefit greatly from the mall in the early years. However, as the clock only moves forward, changes were bound to come by the beginning of the next decade. Right now we're seeing what would have once been the JCPenney court, long ago. It still has a few reminders of what once was, from the covered planter to the skylights which dot its long-forgotten entrance. Everything down on this end of the mall casts a creepy bluish glow, and that old JCPenney building itself still sits with a label scar of another life stuck to its pebbled facade, with holes in its roof on the inside. There were so many times, so many different instances while walking through this mall where I felt like I wasn't even on planet Earth anymore. The rest of the world had faded away, and I alone was wandering the mall's empty, dreamy-like state. And while wandering the golden corridors, I just tried to picture what it would have once been like, back when all of these halls would have been filled and lit up with happy people, colorful lights, and dozens of beautiful storefronts. But just like that, those memories slip away, and decades later, explorers like me are left to sift through the reminders of the better times, taunting us in that beautiful, forgotten architecture, only wishing we could have experienced the golden years. Montgomery Ward, after beginning to struggle with overexpansion and poor store performance, would close their doors at Keosippi on July 31st, 1981. This wasn't the end of the world though, as a Dollar General store would quickly replace it after, and has been a mainstay in downtown since. Going into the 1980s is where Keosippi Malls, as it would officially be renamed, history starts to get a little fuzzy, as the mall itself started to struggle with foot traffic. Years prior, in 1975, Kmart constructed their newest store on the north side of town, which in the coming years is where you would usually find Keokuk shoppers. Big box stores like Kmart and Walmart would sprout up in the coming years and were just so much more convenient for locals. In '83, JCPenney would downsize, closing their auto center out front, with the store itself soon closing at some point in the late 80s. Once again, this was no issue, as it would be replaced by a Helig Myers furniture store, but the closure of JCPenney and the departure of the mall's last original anchor tenant was once again a sign of troubles ahead. The only person I encountered during my visit to this mall was an older fellow mopping up the tile floors. Perhaps one of this mall's only employees, or only. I didn't want to record him, but he was doing such a good job at keeping those 50-plus-year-old tile floors looking like they did on opening day. I asked him how he was doing when walking past, and he replied along the lines of, "Well, I'd rather be out there. It was a beautiful day out." He then scooted his little mop cart down one of the back hallways near Dollar General, and I never saw him again. After that, I had the entire mall to myself, as not a single other soul ventured in. The biggest change of hands came about in 1989 when GGP sold the mall to the Rouse Company. If this sounds familiar, it's because this sale reoccurs in several other of my Iowan Mall videos, as GGP dumping all of these malls in '89 was sort of the end of their golden years. Rouse's only big difference would be the addition of the tungsten bulbs, which dot up and down the dark corridors. Yeah, you were probably wondering why I didn't bring them up earlier. Well, it's because they weren't always here. Before Rouse and the GGP era, Keosippi was a very naturally dark mall, not really attracting shoppers, and its dead stores at the time weren't really lending a helping hand, so the addition of the golden lighting throughout the mall was a big plus when it premiered. Stores to come and go throughout the 80s into the 90s included Disc Jockey, Bronze, Zales, Pizza Hut, and Maurice's, among others. Despite the additions of the new stores, new lighting, and new anchors, Keosippi Mall would go into yet another new decade, this time one in which it would never recover. In 1993, the struggling Woolworths would close their store in the mall. It would be replaced by a stage store, which over the years cycled names Peebles, Goodies, and then finally Gordman's, now closed. The 90s is really when Keosippi Mall began to meet its end though, as even that long ago, the big name brands that once called it home saw zero opportunity in the slowly dying Keokuk, Iowa. Surrounding the aging mall was an aging city, blighted abandoned homes and urban prairies. Maurice's, Disc Jockey, Bronze, Claire's, and several others would all vacate through the rest of the 90s. In January of 2001, Helig Myers, after filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, would close the remainder of their 116 stores, including Keosippi's. This northerly acre would never go on to reopen, still sitting today, vacant and decaying for over 23 years. I love this picture from the mall's early years, which shows a gentleman chilling outside of Osco Drug. And if you look closely, you can see the planter and the tiny shrubs that would one day become what they are now, the giant monstrous plants that now dot the mall's corridors. In 2003, the mall would be purchased by a joint venture of local Keokuk investors, calling themselves the Strategic Growth Group. And as boring as that name sounds, it's actually where the mall's history gets pretty interesting. Their leader and new mall manager, Shannon Zetterland, two-time winner of Miss Iowa in 2001 and 2002, still, even today, plasters herself on the company's and mall's website, which are both somehow still up and running, although being about 20 years behind. This purchase is also when the group would change the mall's name from the long-standing Keosippi Mall to just River City Mall, marketing it as a spot for local and small businesses. This new ownership did little, and soon more stores would leave. Long-standing favorites like Radio Shack and Regis left with nothing coming to replace them. On January 5th, 2005, Osco Drug would too close their doors at the mall. All of this leaving River City Mall completely dead. Now, some of you may be asking why I was just venturing down and back to see the same sights over and over again. Well, it's just because I knew I would most likely never be back here, and the only video of this mall to come before mine comes in the form of...
Hey guys, it's hummus here. I'm inside of a dead mall.
So yeah, I wanted to make sure I could document as much as I could, because this was a beautiful and very special mall, and the residents of this town deserve to know what once was, and what always will be, forever in the minds of those who traversed it. And over the years, very little has happened. In 2006, the abandoned JCPenney Auto Center, which was used for a short time as an Amco gas, would be torn down and replaced with Casey's. Dollar General has long since cut off its mall access, and in 2014, the movie theater would be sold and modernized, then closed forever in 2020, with its marquee bulbs being one of the last traditional tenants to leave. And those hallways still open up to shoppers today, yet long forgotten by locals and passersby. I don't know how the doors are still open here, but it's just a miracle that even all these years later in 2024, we can still explore the mall's hallways as they would have been 55 years ago. So what do you think the future holds for River City Mall? Does this old building still have some shot of redemption, or are these the final few years in which it'll still be around? Before it too, like the old buildings and blocks that came before it, is torn down. Guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching tonight's episode. Keosippi Mall was one I've been dying to see for myself ever since I learned of its shrouded existence. And boy, was I glad I made the trip down. If any of you are ever in the area, stop in, let the golden light take you away, and enjoy yourself, as I did on that relaxing spring afternoon. If you guys enjoy my Dead Mall series, be sure to hit the subscribe button, as it's free and it helps me out so much. And if you'd like to support further, consider checking out the Patreon for sneak peeks and loads of bonus content. Next week we'll be live at a mall of your choosing, but 2 weeks from now we'll be back once again, this time visiting a mall in a small Missourian city. A mall that, despite several renovations, still sits empty, dark, and dead. Guess which mall we'll be at, and I'll shout you out in the next episode. But until then, have yourselves a lovely evening, and peace out, guys. See you later. Wow, look at that. It's all still there. Murals and everything. Oh, Cardinals fans, alright. Wow, that is so cool.